On this episode of AV Week, we take a look at the power of edge devices and edge processing, also chip shortages throughout the AV industry. All that and more next on AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is AV Week, episode 506, recorded Friday, April 30th, 2021. Certifiable.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by
Extron, industry-leading technology backed by world-class support.
And by Vadio, a leading manufacturer of professional PTZ cameras, Pro AV solutions, and UCC integration systems.
This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of audio-visual news and information. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. With us to discuss the news and information we have gathered this week. First and foremost, Corey Schaefer from QSC. Welcome, ma'am.
Hey, good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Also with us is Craig McCormick from Commercial Integrator Magazine. Welcome, sir.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Absolutely. And last but not least, my buddy and pal, Mr. Bradford Ben from Advisors. Welcome, sir.
Your pleasure to have me as always, Tim. Great to be here.
Absolutely. A couple of really quick notes. I was going to put this on as a conversation piece, and you guys are more than welcome to comment on it, but really just more top of news. Early this morning, we recorded this on Friday, April 30th. ISE, Integrated Systems Europe, announced that they were canceling 2 of their 4 locations in Europe, both in Germany and in the Netherlands, due to those countries' restrictions. So they're still doing one in Barcelona, still doing one in London. Also, earlier this week, this was my first business trip since COVID. I've got both my shots. I got to hang out with our friends over at Crestron and did a nice fireside chat with them. So you can go over to their website and Mitchell will put a link up to that. You can check that out as well. So first story, though, actually comes to us from our good friend, Mr. Craig McCormick, talking about the chip shortage. And actually, this is something a couple weeks ago that Chris Nato and the AV and the AM folks had some conversations about. A shortage in semiconductors and other materials is going to impact AV quite substantially here in the next couple of months. This is a couple of different things coming together, and Craig, will start with you on this. From my understanding, not only do you have the chip shortage, and that is directly correlated with COVID because you had people who were sick, factories shut down all over the world, and those folks are slowly but surely coming back together. But you had a lull in manufacturing, and you also have a lull and a backup in the ports, depending on what country you're in. Here in the States, we've got 2 main, and I say main, don't write me letters, I know that we have several ports, but our 2 main ports were one on the East Coast and one on the West Coast. You're talking about LA and New York, right? New York, New Jersey area. Craig, when you started going down this, and what did you discover about, not only just the causes, but when do we expect to get out of this?
Well, just to give credit, it was our associate editor, Zach Como, that wrote this feature story, and he did a lot of in-depth reporting, talking to distributors and some others within the channel. I don't know that there was any sort of deadline or kind of date that this is going to turn around, put on it anywhere. I don't know that anybody kind of wants to dip their toe into the water and kind of be held to a specific date where things are going to turn around. I think it's not going to end anytime soon, though. We're starting to see more vaccines and less cases of COVID, and things are starting to normalize to some degree, but I still think it's going to be a while before everything gets caught up.
All right, Corey, from a manufacturing standpoint, when you look at things like shortages as well as backups and ports, how do you communicate that to your clients and to the end users as well?
So our ask is that we just have really great communication on both ends. So them to us and their need, and drop dead dates and timelines, and giving us as much visibility as possible. And we also are trying to give our partners as much visibility to availability. But it's a killer because at QASC we've announced many new solutions that require these. We all have had such a difficult year, and we want business to pick up, and we want to capitalize on that. And it's would say the supplier team inside QSC is just having multiple meetings a day with this, with the global sales team, just trying to juggle and balance inventory. And I'll tell you, we will stay loyal to those partners who have been really loyal to us. And although you've got new people coming in and wanting access because they're having trouble getting maybe from a partner they were loyal to, it's hard for us to make a quick switch. So we want the business, but first we need to be loyal to partners we've had established already. I can tell you, I have my other half has been dealing with shortages and back inventory, for well over a year in his product catalog. Just it's unfortunate because all day, every day, he's balancing back order and inventory and what's available, and it's really hurting the vision and long-term forecast. They can't even handle new orders, so it's going to be a rough 2021. We're all optimistic because we're coming out of COVID, and then now this, so trying to get back to business as usual is going to be some time for sure. But I think it comes with communication on customer side as well as the vendor side.
I'm going to ask a really, really unfair question, and I admit that before I ask you this, and you can just tell me no comment and we'll move on.
Okay.
When you do get product, how do you decide who gets it? Like, is it, and there's a reason I'm asking this. So if you've got an installation, let's say it's at the White House, right? And then you've got one at Bradford's house, right? But Bradford put his order in a month before the White House did. Does Bradford get it or does the White House get it?
So I'll say that I don't actually have to manage those within QSC, but what I can tell you, so that's a little bit of my out, Tim, but honestly, QSC is mostly loyal to the partners that have been loyal to us. So, small or large, high visibility, low visibility, it's kind of about these long-term relationships, and we still really lean on those, and it's really true. And so it's unfortunate to turn a project away because we definitely don't want to do that, but yet it's not worth risking a relationship that we've had for a long time that has been consistent over the years.
All right. Mr. Ben, you are in a unique position as usual, but you worked for a manufacturer for a number of years. You've been an integrator. Now you are a consultant. You've also worked as an end user. So from all of those perspectives, what does this do? If you were, take yourself back to your days as an end user, do you adjust? Do you start prioritizing, we don't really need this room, but we really need this one?
So there's a couple things we do. And I also want to point out, this isn't just pro AV. This is residential. This is every market.
Automotive.
I'm waiting for toothbrushes to be impacted because so many of them are Bluetooth now to make sure you brushed enough. But, it's across the board. And, it's a challenge. So for me as an end user, obviously the first thing we would look at is which has the most impact.
Yeah.
Of if I have a room that seats 25 or a room that seats 100 and they both need one amplifier, the room that seats 100, I'm going to probably prioritize that. But obviously if the room that seats 25 is my office or the president of the company's office, they're getting that amplifier. So there's that. The other thing is, as an end user, you have to talk with your integrators, and depending on the size of the project, you have to talk with your supplier and manufacturers to let them know what's coming down the pipeline. We went through this with the reduction of hazardous substances, or RoHS, years ago, and it's a pain. There's no other way to put it. But through the active communication, you can kind of manage it. And as Corey said, it is a balancing act of who gets stuff and who doesn't. But the other thing I tell people is, the farther out the better. But also, if you can avoid it, don't design to a single product, which I know some people don't like Corey. So I'm about to give Corey and QSC some credit here by the fact they virtualized their QSC cores that is not as hardware dependent. But the same idea of, if you need a 300 watt amplifier or a 400, watt amplifier. QSC has like 20 models that'll do that. I might be exaggerating. So you define to that, not saying I need this specific model, because that gives you a better chance to get what you need. Now, obviously with speakers and DSP, sometimes it's a little more persnickety and has to be a little more precise, but it's the same kind of idea of design to have options. And it's a tough thing because loyalty is important. There are a lot of projects I couldn't have done when I was an integrator, even now as a transitioning end user to consultant, without the support of the manufacturers and the integrators. So it's all about open communication. But I'll also say, and this sounds weird, it's not unheard of to have these scheduling issues. When I was a product manager
To this
at
extent?
what? No, I'm about to tell you a story.
All right.
So Harman was releasing a new AVB product, and to get the AVB chips we needed was a 22-week lead time. So if you want to launch a product and then have inventory in stock and you have 22-week lead time, that becomes a huge thing. And then if you're like, oh, we can ship this to you by December 1st, you better order your products, 22 weeks before November 1st. And it becomes a juggling act. It's obviously impacting us because so many places have become just in time. They're only going to hold 5 things in stock in order because that's the better way to manage cash flow, etc. And that's kind of made this one harder than the transfer for Rojas, and also because it's hitting every manufacturer just as hard. But the big thing, sorry, go ahead, Corey.
I was just going to say, and the fact that, it's been a tough year with COVID. So people want and need the business, right? So, this is just not, this is just not an ideal. I don't think there's ever an ideal time, but this just makes it even more difficult.
So I want to bring up something, and all three of you feel free to chime in on this, and this is probably going to take us to where we only have 2 stories, which is fine. Does this situation warrant more localized manufacturing? And what I'm getting by that is yes, we all depend on China for chipsets, right? That's kind of what we do. And I'm not saying, we should bring manufacturing back or wherever. This is not a political statement. It's more of a supply chain question. Is it where have we gotten to the place where Bradford's right from a business standpoint, the just-in-time ordering, it makes complete sense for cash flow, and so you're not holding on to massive amounts of inventory. But that's assuming that we can get things in a timely manner. So do we think that it's going to start springing up more regionalized or localized technology manufacturing where chipsets and things of that nature are made in Europe, made in North America, South America, and in different parts of APAC?
I think a couple things. I think, it's not just in time just in time manufacturing, just in time when you need the product, et cetera. The just in time kind of fits through the food chain. So I think there's, I think we're going to see more localized, if not manufacturing, certainly inventory. And I think every company's looking at crisis management, right? And how do we put, how do we spread things around the globe so that we can avoid things like this in the future? And I would, on this communication with the end user, the the integrator and the vendor, we have to have communication, because if a project gets pushed back, which they often do, allowing the manufacturer to know that to fulfill another customer order that might be more urgent would be, would help everyone, et cetera. So being able to have, really consistent dialogue and planning. But so I see regionalized manufacturing, regionalized inventory, and for us to rethink the critical parts. Maybe we don't just order them when the install happens, but we think a little bit further, a little more long term.
And I also think Corey's very right on that, but I also think there are others, not saying there are other solutions because technology is bad, but I still remember solid state amplifiers that didn't have microprocessors in them. Yes, DSP gives us a lot of stuff, gives us a lot of amplifier management, but it also means you need to have the chips to do it. And maybe there are times replacing a smart amp with a less smart amp makes sense. And sometimes that comes down to, like you said, parts availability. But I do agree, having chips manufactured in more places would definitely be helpful, especially for supply chain lead times. If you look at some of the large companies, they have a manufacturing facility in China that builds for Asia Pac Rim, a manufacturing facility in Europe that builds for EMEA, and then they have a manufacturing facility somewhere in the Western Hemisphere, whether it be North America or, US or Canada or Mexico, where they have a local facility to be able to get those parts faster, but also to ship the finished goods to people faster. So I think it's also going to be a little bit of a supply chain logistics issue. And, like you said, not trying to get political, but I do think one of the things that COVID has taught us is outsourcing as much stuff as we have to overseas has at times made a country less stable on its own. And it's not just the United States. It's India not being able to get enough vaccine, Canada not being able to get enough vaccine, all of those. So while the chip shortage is bad, it's emblematic of the overall global supply chain.
Thanks so much for watching this first segment of AV Week. To check out the rest of the episode for free, click on the link below or go by the website, avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv.